When you start living with the end in mind, everything starts to change. What are people going to say about you? What message is your life going to speak when you're long gone? Because you weren't born by accident. You didn't just happen to be where you're at and happen to watch this video. There is always a reason. Go for it. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the Fused Life podcast, where heaven meets earth through you. And our guest, we've already done an episode. So if you haven't watched part one, make sure you go check it out. That was done 2 days ago. And now we're going into part two with our amazing Christopher Carter. So Chris, I just want to welcome you again. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Again, thanks, Joseph. It was a really great first outing a few days ago, and I loved seeing all the comments and being able to interact with everyone. So thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, I think us Kiwis, we have a wild bunch. They like the back and forth. And I got some feedback that this was really good because it was simple to grasp and understand, which I believe is a really good sign. You know, I think the Lord takes the complicated and makes it simple. And I think your teaching style and speaking style is amazing. So really excited for this morning.
Thanks.
Well, I think we go straight into it in terms of heavenly encounters and how there is open access for all of us. Yeah. And we talked about imagination a little bit. Is there any particular thing after the last episode that you want to touch on or start with?
Well, I'll tell you, I think it would be good for your listeners to understand how much of a skeptic I was and still am. Yeah. I mean, I consider myself quite the skeptic. I'm very slow to believe things. And so with me, it takes a really long time to kind of change my mind about something. And oftentimes, like even when I'm talking to groups of people, I'm never really sharing what I'm currently experiencing because I can't make sense of it. And so normally it's years later after I've really processed and had the Lord explain to me 18 different ways, like how to understand what's going on. So I thought maybe if you'd like to do this, Joseph, I thought it would be good for your listeners and watch.
Oh no, what is going on with the connection? Okay, hold on, guys. We're going to check. Something like this happened last time with Chris's internet. So let him get back here. I'm going to get him to just check that his internet is free.
Win, Joseph.
Okay, you're back. So
okay.
I don't know what happened is because I know at the end of the last episode, maybe do you think someone's on the internet there at your place or are you good?
No, my house is empty.
Okay. So that theory is out the window.
Right. It can only be my fault. So no one else is on.
Yeah. I mean, I was just looking at my signal strength. It looks good. So we can just make it work. We keep moving and see what happens. So
yeah.
You were saying that you thought for our listeners, it might be good if cool.
So yeah, I thought that it would be good for folks to hear just why I decided to put my faith in something that was very unprecedented to me and how that process really looked, because it wasn't like this happened and I went, okay, great, let's just believe it. It really was a case of first, make sure I'm not crazy. Let's check off some of the boxes of, I went home, I talked to my wife. I told her everything that had happened after that first inaugural experience. And she actually watched me very closely for 2 years. This is not a joke. Like, this is exactly what happened. She watched me carefully for 2 years to make sure that these encounters in the heavenly realms that I was sharing were going to produce good fruit. My wife is she has a doctorate of pharmacy. And so she had a kind of a focus on mental health. So she understood the telltale signs of delusions, right? I know this is a good conversation to have, isn't it? And
yeah,
so
totally. Yep.
So so she tells me one day, like 2 years after this has been happening with me, and she essentially says, you know, I've been hesitant to join you in this journey because I've been watching you for 2 solid years because I thought she's like, I've seen people become delusional. And she's like, they never become better human beings because of delusions. Wow. So even if their delusion is of them being a good human being, if it's just a delusion, they never become good human beings. So, they become lazy, they become apathetic, they become complacent, they're not as nice, whatever the case may be. And so she comes to me one day, just my amazing wife, and she says, so I've watched you for 2 years. And she said, in those 2 years, you've become a better dad and a better husband. And you love me more, you love the kids more, you love your neighbors more, you seem closer to the Lord. And she's like, there's no way you can be faking this. Because if you were, this would never happen. Like, you can't fake the good fruit. And so she looked at me and she goes, I'm ready to do this, like, with you. Like, let's do this together. Like, let's make this part of our family practice. But God bless her, she was a skeptic just like me, like let's just watch and see what happens and make sure that all of this bears good fruit. I think that's kind of stuck with me ever since. But I wanted to tell you, Joseph, that there's a few moments early on where things happened in my heavenly experience that seemed to directly translate here into this mortal realm, and it changed the way that I thought of things. So one story that I love to tell, because it's kind of funny all at the same time, but when this started happening to me, my son had just been born. So I had like a couple-month-old son, and so we're happy in the house. My 2.5-year-old daughter does what many children do when you introduce a new child into the house. She kind of decides to throw a bunch of tantrums because it's uncomfortable. Like the parent's attention is suddenly very divided to the newborn. And my daughter was just so well behaved. And so when this started, we were like, as parents, new parents, when you have, you understand where I'm coming from here, Joseph. Do we ever really know what we're doing? Probably not. And so we didn't know what we were doing. I just knew my daughter was one way. We brought our new baby home. She's totally different. And we exhausted our limited knowledge of parenting trying to fix it, And so this is just a few months into me experiencing the heavens. So I went to my office one day, and I'm just, as I would do, I would just kind of close these eyes, open the eyes of my heart. And I just found myself trusting my first impressions. I found myself walking in the garden with the Lord, with Jesus, so I'm walking with him down this pathway. And as it would happen back, especially in the beginning, so often we would not be talking about anything serious. We would just be talking about, like, we would just be getting to know each other, so it was this kind of conversation that was so personal and so rich, without it becoming overly spiritual or religious. Like I wasn't interceding for all of the people in need. We were just almost shooting the breeze, walking together in the garden like you would do with a friend that you really wanted to spend time with. And so we were just talking and walking along, and I'm taking in all the sights and the sounds and the smells. And I remember I looked at him at one moment, and it dawned on me, like, oh no, I hope I'm not wasting this time. I should start praying for things. And so I looked at him and I said, okay, Lord, I really want to pray for my daughter right now, and I just started to describe it to him, and he goes, wait. He says, what are you doing? And he goes, don't say pray. He said, just talk to me. Like, don't go into your religious mode. Like, we're just here talking like friends. Just keep talking to me. And so I looked at him and just, for your listeners, I just think this is a funny thing. The word prayer isn't used in the Bible really until about 2,000 years of recorded biblical history have passed. So it's not really until Abraham's time that someone comes up with the word pray. And from the last episode we did together, I nerd out over words,
Yep.
So prayer is almost a term that humans had to learn as we distanced ourselves from that original state. We almost had to learn the term prayer. And nowadays it kind of means a form of communication that involves distance and delay. That's kind of what we think of when we think of prayer. But here I was in the spirit, just like John, I knew where I was in my mortal life, but I was also in the spirit that day. And I'm walking around, the Garden of Eden with the Lord. So he goes, don't say pray, just talk to me. So I said, all right, Lord, I really need help with my daughter. I said, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like a terrible dad. And that's all the words I got out. And as soon as I said that, I watched probably the first time this happened in these early heavenly experiences. I watched this angel fly to Jesus' side, and he whispers something to the angel, and the angel flies away. And I looked at him and I was like, okay, I've never seen that happen before. What just took place? And he quotes to me that verse out of Matthew about the little ones, the children, that their angels always see the face of my Father who's in heaven. And so that was probably Isabel's angel, right? So I don't even know what's transacted. We talked a little bit more, finished my time in the spirit.
Maybe there's an option of trying Zoom. Chris, what do you think? Should I try my Zoom connection?
We certainly could. It's entirely up to you. I'm here at your disposal. I'm good on this end.
Okay, cool. So you can just take it from there, Chris, and we go for it. Okay.
Where we were in this story is that I was kind of recounting this moment where I'm talking to Jesus about an issue that I'm having with my daughter because of our son that had just come into the world. I'm in the heavens with the Lord, walking in the garden. I mention, my daughter, that we're struggling as parents to know what to do. I watch this angel fly up to Jesus's side. And then I watch the angel fly away and I go, Lord, what just happened? And he says, well, he recites that Matthew 18, the little ones, their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. Now I got done with my time in the heavens, and within a few hours, my wife calls me, and she had taken the kids to the zoo. And she just said, I don't know what's happened, but our daughter is completely different. It's like she's completely back to where she was before. And she goes, I have no idea what the change was. And all that took place was in that 2-hour time, what I saw up there translated down here, and some angel did something to intercede or to interact with my young daughter in a way that it completely went back to normal. And so when my wife tells me that, I said, I think I may know what's happened. I said, let me tell you what I saw, So there was a moment like that. I'm just going to give you a few of these early stories so you know like what made me throw my heart over the fence. Not long after that, a friend of mine that lived in a different city calls me up and just says, Christopher, I'm really struggling. I'm in a lot of pain. And I've got a lot of pain in my back, and I've been to the doctors and no one seems to know what the problem is, but I'm really struggling here. And this person, it was a friend of mine. She didn't know what I had been doing, in my own personal time with the Lord. So she didn't know about, any of this heavenly interaction that I'd been experiencing or anything like that. And so she just said, would you pray for me? And I said, sure. And I didn't even tell her what I was doing. So this particular day, as was the custom, I would go to my office where I was writing my first book. I titled that first book, Caught Up in the Spirit, even before this had happened to me. So I have no idea what I planned to write the book about because I didn't know it, So It was halfway through the writing process that this took place. So anyway, I would go to my office, I'd close these eyes, I open the eyes of my heart, and the eyes of my imagination. I'm in what I felt like was like the city, the New Jerusalem, that Revelation New Jerusalem city. And I'm walking on the outskirts of that city with Jesus. And it's the same situation. We're just having the best time because I'm walking around the heavenly city with my Messiah, getting to know him like I would, like Joseph, like you and I would get to know each other. Like if I go visit you in New Zealand or you come to Florida someday, which I trust will happen, given as much fun as this has been, getting to know you just a little bit,
Yeah.
And I'm convinced at some point you're going to have to be my personal trainer or something like that. You're going to get you're going to get the whole life stuff worked out here. We all bring our part. We all stay in our lane,
Yeah.
And so anyway, same story. I'm up there walking around, just having to pinch myself because I'm in that heavenly city with the Lord. And then it occurs to me again, I should ask him for things. Like this is the perfect time to ask him for things. So I looked at him and I didn't make the same mistake. I didn't go into prayer mode. I didn't go, okay, Lord, I just want to pray for my friend. I just looked at him and said, Lord, I got this call today from a friend of mine who's really worried because she's in a lot of pain. And all I did was convey to him the voicemail that she had left me. Just, hey, here are the symptoms. This is what's going on. I didn't even ask him to do anything. I was just telling him what the symptoms were. And as I'm doing that, he gets out this almost like a little pad of paper, like a doctor would. He writes the prescription, rips it out like a doctor would, like, you know how they do their little scribble, you know, rips it out. Same situation. He hands it to an angel, and I watch the angel fly away. And again, no one was there, so I'll understand if no one believes me because you're a skeptic like I am. I totally will get it. I would not be offended if people are like, yeah, I can't believe that. But I'm going to give you my word. This is exactly how the story happened. Within hours, I get another message from my friend. And the message is, the pain is completely gone. What happened?
Wow.
And I said, okay, we should talk. And so this is like the first few weeks of exploring this access to the heavens. So I get on the phone with my friend, and I just said, okay, here's what I saw. I was talking to Jesus. He writes this down. He sends it. This angel flew over, and my friend goes, I'd really like to know what he wrote on that piece of paper. Now you have to keep in mind, I have not figured out how to tell anybody really what I'm doing. And so I just said very simply, I said, well, here's what I think you should do. Find a quiet spot, close your eyes, just use the eyes of your heart, the eyes of your imagination, and just go, Lord, where are you in the room with me right now? So just imagine the room that you're in. Don't make it hard. And just go, Lord, where are you in this room right now? And trust your very first impressions. Don't write anything off as being silly or unspiritual. Tell the Holy Spirit that you believe that the Holy Spirit is bigger than your intellect and your will by just trusting the first impressions. Because what do you have to lose, you know? And I said, and then when you do that and you can imagine the Lord in the room with you, ask the Lord that question. So my friend does that. And she gets back with me, and this is the story that she tells. She says, I was rocking, she had a newborn at the time. She said, I was rocking my son to sleep in the rocking chair. And I did what you said. I closed my eyes. I opened the eyes of my heart. I imagined Jesus in the room with me. And I saw him there. And she's rocking her son to sleep. All the lights are almost out. And she goes, I just looked at him and said, Lord, I really want to know what you wrote on that piece of paper. And he hands the piece of paper to her. And all it had written on it was the words, release her. That's all it said. So I want you to just imagine the cosmic thing that took place in that moment. He wrote on this piece of paper, release her, gave it to the angel. The angel flies over to wherever she was and hands it to whatever fallen spiritual being had been bothering her. And just goes, hey, note from the king, you got to let her go. And then it goes, oh, okay, I'm out of here. And then off it goes. And that's when the pain left her that moment. One more story, Joseph, and then if you want to throw some questions in here, feel free. And some of these are funny. A lot of the stuff that happens with me in the spirit is comical. Jesus makes jokes with me all the time. So it's not like you go up there and he's like this, very proprietary, like everything is, the these and the thous. Like he's a lot of fun. And I tell people all the time, if you haven't had Jesus play jokes on you yet, you're really missing out, because he is the best practical joker ever. Like he loves messing with the siblings, with the younger siblings, like an older brother would, So a lot of stuff gets funny when you're up there, even when you think it's really serious. So here we go. I'm going to compress another story here into just a few minutes. I was writing my first book, Caught Up in the Spirit, and I got to this section in the book, and this is still when it was being edited by the editor. There was a 4-page section where I started to introduce the idea of being in the Spirit like I was experiencing and like John experienced in the book of Revelation, right? And I was just introducing that idea. And, frankly, I wasn't very good at it because it was so new to me. It was hard for me to even express it. And so that section kept getting sent back to me. The editor didn't even know how to fix it. He wouldn't even try. He was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about here, Chris. You got to work on this some more. I tried to fix it 4 times, and every time he would send it back, the editor made no changes. It was just like, it's nonsensical. You have to fix it, Yeah. It's not a joke again. The last time, he even sent it to 2 messianic rabbis that he knew. to go, can you make sense of what this guy is trying to say? And they were like, no, we can't. No one can, you know? So so it occurs to me, because I'm kind of dense. It occurs to me, you know, Christopher, the next time that you're walking around heaven with Jesus, why don't you ask him about this? You know, like, I don't know why it took that long for me to go, maybe he's got something to offer, you know? So again, I would go to my office. I kept this office out of the house that I would go to, and I would write. And I sat on the floor, and I closed these eyes, and I opened the eyes of my heart. And the first thing I see standing in the office with me, just trusting my first impressions, was this angel who's just like, he was so excited. He goes, are you ready? Like, let's go up. Let's go into the heavens. I said, great, lead the way. So I'm just trusting the eyes of my imagination to tell me this story. But he takes me to these giant doors in the heavens. He opens them up, and I walk into this cathedral, Joseph, that was so big, it looked like it could have held city blocks in the inside. It was just giant. And it was just loaded with rows and rows and rows of pews. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of people could have fit in here. Great big aisle down the middle, giant vaulted arched, you know, roof ceiling, and big pillars, you know, holding everything up and supporting it. And the angel walks me about halfway down, and we kind of go into one of the pews and we sit down. And I look up at the front, and it's like banks of organ pipes, you know, like you'd see at the front, like proper church, you know, these golden organ pipes that must have been a couple stories tall. And almost like Catholic style, there was two like choirs facing each other, like they would sit like this facing each other at the front. And it looked to me like this angelic choir sitting there. And I looked at the angel, and I'm trying to make sense of this. I'm going, why have you brought me here? What's going on? And he has this almost like this impish grin on his face that said, Christopher, I know something that you don't, and I'm not about to tell you. And I've learned that look so well, because I get it in the heavens all the time. I know something you don't, and I'm not about to tell you. And so we're sitting there, and it's pin drop silence, like it's just not a sound. All of a sudden, the organ lets out this blast of sound, and the choir in the front erupts in the song of Handel's Messiah, the point in the Hallelujah chorus, which people I think always hear at Christmas time. And they erupt in that moment of the Hallelujah chorus, where it picks up with the King of Kings forever and ever, and Lord of Lords, hallelujah. And it was just this blast of sound and singing. Don't laugh at my singing, Joseph. I see you laughing. You can't make fun of that. And so, yeah, I'm almost shaken out of this seat. And I look at the angel, who's now laughing. And I looked at him, and he's finally ready to tell me what's going on. He said, Christopher, this is choir practice. He said, they're practicing this song for Christ's return. He said, this is the song that they're going to usher in his second advent to. Now, I'm sitting in the pew, and my first thought was, man, if I ever get to meet Handel, the composer who wrote that, you're going to have to shake that guy's hand, because that's something really impressive to put on your resume. I wrote the soundtrack to Jesus' second coming, you know, like that's pretty impressive, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm watching choir practice happen. I see Jesus come into the front of this massive cathedral, and he kind of gives me one of these. He motions for me to walk up front. So I walk down, you know, up or down the aisle, and I sit with him on the front row. Choir's kind of died down a little bit, and he has this notebook, and on the inside, he has the 4 pages of my manuscript that kept getting sent back to me. And our Lord has taken a red pen to each page, and he's got words crossed out. He's got paragraphs moved around. He's got entire sections where he's like, you know how you're trying to say this? He's like, you don't even need to try to say it. You know how you were here on page 3? He's like, you need to lead with that. That's what you start with. And he's just got it all moved around, and I'm taking mental pictures as I'm watching. He went through each page with me to show me all the corrections to make. When we got done, Joseph, I bolted out of that cathedral. I was like, thank you, Lord. I have to go write this down before I forget it. So I opened my biological eyes. I ran to my computer. I made all of the changes. Again, if anyone could be forgiven for not believing me because you weren't there. But I kid you not, in 24 hours after sending that rewritten version, my editor sends me an email that says, Christopher, I don't know what you did, but it's perfect.
Wow.
And that was the end of it. And those kinds of things kept happening. And I'm just telling you stories from the first 2 or 3 weeks. There's a decade of those stories that have convinced me of just how close that heavenly realm is to this one, and just how much the Lord is he's so excited to spend time with us, that he's just ready for us to be in the heavenly realms with him. He's ascended to the right hand of the Father. He seated us in heavenly places. And when we just start working up there, it's amazing what comes down into this world of our mortal sojourn. So that's a good place for a pause, Joseph, if you want to throw anything in here.
Yeah, well, firstly, that's amazing. Secondly, I'd like to also publicly say that there are some things that maybe I am skeptic right now, like I'm skeptic of right now, and that's okay. And I know Chris knows it's okay. That's why I'm saying it. Because this is all a journey. It's like that. And
yes,
you be skeptical reading the Bible with the stories in there, like that it can really happen. But what gets me is the earthly shift. And right from the beginning, even in on the other platform that we began this podcast on, where you talked about how you have changed as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a neighbor. Like, I think that is so important to actually see a direct correlation of I'm doing things with the Lord, and as I behold, I do change, and so all these 3 stories that you shared are absolutely amazing. And I do want to raise some points. Like, it's quite interesting that you have this issue with your book, and you have this encounter with this angel. Let's go up there. And when you get up there, you're in a cathedral, which at that time probably has nothing to do with your book, right? And you don't shut it off. And I can see how many times we would encounter God and shut that off because it's not related to my problem,
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Joseph, that's a huge point. Yeah.
And there's so much we could go into there, and maybe we should.
Yeah.
But what else are you feeling you want to say? Because I think the early days do matter. Like, I've had some encounters. I'd like to share them with you when this call's done. And when they finished, I was like, this can't be real. But I was having an earthly reaction. My body, my tears, my heart beating, earthly reaction to this thing that I just saw. But yet there are times where it's like, did it really happen? Did I just make that up? And in that moment, you couldn't have convinced me otherwise. Like, I didn't know if I was physically there or if I was, So can you speak to that, the first few weeks of when you're beginning engaging, and you say it so calmly right now, because I heard in your other podcast that you sit down in a place, right? You've got your coffee or a drink, and you got a book, I think, and you close your eyes and then you open the eyes. Like, at the beginning, surely it wasn't that simple, was it?
Oh, that's a great question, Joseph. So for the first, let's just call it a month or 2, it was the easiest thing I'd ever done. Like there's something about like a honeymoon phase of something where it's so fresh, and it's more like you're in it. So you're not really questioning anything, like you're just in it and you're flowing with it, and it's just super easy. So a lot of those stories I just told happened in those first couple months of it being the easiest thing I'd ever done. I'll tell you another story too. Again, I'll tell you 2, and then I'll get to what happened after it wasn't easy. When I probably one of the second or third days after that initial experience, the garden became this place that I would just meet the Lord in. And so I'm walking around the garden with what I felt the part of the Godhead was the Father. Like I was walking with Dad in the garden. And the whole time, Joseph, he kept calling me the second son. And I kept thinking, is he making some spiritual point? But he keeps saying, no, you're the second son in your family. Now, I got, out of that experience, and it took me a few weeks to get up the courage, but I eventually was talking to my mom. And I said, Mom, I was having this experience, is there something I don't know? Like, was there ever another sibling? My mom says at that moment, I miscarried a baby before you and your sister.
Wow.
And I was talking, I think it was over the phone, and I said, Mom, that was a boy. I said, because the entire time I was in the heavens, he keeps telling me I'm the second son in our family. And I just, that Father God has a record of that, and that you bring it down here and you ask someone, hey, is there something I don't know? Because he keeps saying this, There was moments like that. There were also moments where I remember this was like such a stretch of my faith, Joseph. I would go up there again in the garden, and I would feel like I was in school, and I would be sitting down, and sometimes I was aware of other people there. And the Lord put a Bible in front of me and opened it up to Deuteronomy. And he goes, here, you should read this. And I freaked out because I was like, Lord, if I try to read this here in the heavens, and it turns out to not be what it says in my actual Bible, it's going to crush my faith. Like, it's just going to crush it. And he was like, just do it. Like, just look at it. You tell me what you think this passage is about. And I was like, I feel like I'm taking wild guesses here, Lord, but I'm going to go with it. It has to do with the curtains of the tabernacle and their thickness and how they were supposed to be woven. And he's like, great, now go check it in your actual Bible. And I kid you not, Joseph, we did that a number of times, and every single time what I was reading there matched what I was reading here. Now, I'm just going to say that to make this one crazy, far-fetched point. I wrote about this in the first book I ever wrote, Caught Up in the Spirit. There is absolutely a copy of the scriptures in the heavenly places. And that makes total sense. Like, why wouldn't there be a copy of the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, the Gospels, the letters, John's Revelation? And it is there and available to read. The implications of that in the years to come, in the decades or centuries to come, I have no idea. But the possibility of reading the scriptures there, because we've learned to open our eyes, is something I'm very keen to understand, like where we're going in all of this. Now, that's just an aside. That's a really far out kind of, where does that lead us kind of thing. But to get back to your question, Joseph, there was, after it stopped becoming the easiest thing I'd ever done, it really bogged down hard. I mean, like, it became very difficult. And I kept going back to that promise from my first experience that I shared in our first visit together. When he, at the end of this experience, said, Christopher, you can come here and walk and talk with me as often as you like. And I said, Lord, you promised, so I'm going to do this, And I remember one time, Joseph, it was so messed up and I was so bogged down. I prayed, I think, for 4 hours before I glimpsed like 5 minutes of life in the Spirit and in the heavenly places. And I realized, kind of in that really difficult time, I realized all of the things that I was doing to make it hard. So the end result of it getting really difficult is that I don't know if it was 3 months or 4 or 5 or even 6. I can't really remember because it's 10 years ago. But whatever that season was where it was hard, that's the time when I learned all of the techniques that I use today to help people enter into this completely at ease and with no trouble at all. In other words, it bogged down because I was making it hard, not because it was hard to do it. And once I realized that this was, in fact, the easiest thing I have ever done in my entire spiritual life, and I mean this with all my heart, Joseph, this was without a doubt the easiest thing I have ever done. The mechanism to experience the heavens in the Spirit is the easiest thing people will ever do. The only thing that's hard is to give your attention to eternal things in a world, in a culture, in a system that constantly bids us to look down instead of up. That's what's hard. Experiencing the heavens in the Spirit, easiest thing a person will ever learn to do. Disciplining yourself to do it daily so that you fix your eyes on the eternal things and not on the temporal things. You're going to feel like a fish that's swimming against the current so hard. That's what's hard. not the actual mechanism. It's the discipline to keep doing it. And I tell people, it's again, kind of funny, but it's true. It has never been said about anyone in history that ever pursued the eternal things. No one has ever said about people that truly pursued eternal things, wow, they are so normal. That has never been said.
Yeah.
It has never been said of anyone that has pursued, heavenly, eternal realities. Wow, those guys just really fit in. Like that's never a statement. So you feel that. You feel the tug of the current going the opposite direction that you're going. And it's a difficult thing to discipline yourself to do, but the actual mechanism is surprisingly simple and surprisingly easy. And so it's kind of that story, Joseph, of just how it was easy, it got hard, and then it got easy again when I realized it was just me making it hard. That was really the only thing that was standing in the way.
Wow. Would you say that also for just walking with the Lord in general? Because time and time again, you see people get saved, and this honeymoon thing, like, I know that there's some kind of reality there, but I don't like that at all. Like people talk about that, because it's like we get saved, we happily receive the things of the kingdom. We're like, yeah, and then some way it almost feels like we are like, let's put some hoops up, let's put a ladder up, let's try to like work a little bit here. Let me kind of earn a little bit of this. Surely it can't just get better and better and better and better,
Right. Yeah. That was exactly my experience, is that so much of it was me thinking, okay, I have to do this. I have to do this. Now I'm joking here, but kind of not joking. In my mind, I was like, okay, so if I face east, recite the book of Romans, pray for 3 hours, don't sin in the past 24 hours, be nice to everybody around me, it'll work, And I'll give you another story, Joseph, is where I learned that all of that is just a mirage. Like it's a total mirage. Right before I went to my office one day, and you'll understand this, anybody out there that's married is going to understand this. And if you're not, this is a great life lesson. So remember I said this, okay? Right before I went to my office, my wife and I got into a marital discussion, which is a nice way of saying a fight. Like it was epic. It was an epic argument. Words were exchanged, voices were raised. And I was driving to my office, Joseph, and I felt like the biggest jerk in the history of men. And I knew, I was like, I know it takes two people to mess this up, but I was like, this one was mostly my fault. And I knew it. And, the feeling. I know, Joseph, I know the feeling. You're like, this one was on me,
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like a dirty dog. And I was driving to my office like, I cannot believe how colossal of a jerk it's possible for me to be.
Mm.
And so I get to my office. I'm thinking, there's no way I should open my eyes and be in the heavens right now. There's no way I should take advantage of that access. I am unclean,
Hey guys, I just want to take a quick minute to tell you about our Royal Hybrids group coaching program. Over a year ago, the Lord started speaking to me about a group of people, a tribe that would only get their value, their affirmation, that would only get their identity from who they are in God and nothing else. And from that place, they were going to do great things on the earth. In the last year, we have seen a whole bunch of people jump into our program, solidify themselves in their identity with God, and from that place, actually start to engage their purpose. Fuse Life talks about the 6 trees: your spirit, your soul, your body, and then your relationships, your finances, and your purpose. We have seen a whole bunch of people come through this, get solidified in who they are, and then begin their own projects, whether it's a teen mums project, whether it's a coaching, counseling business, or a painting business, publishing your children's book, publishing a puzzle book. We have seen people do all of these kind of things, and we just know that this is just the beginning. So you want to go to www.fusebornformore.com/Royal Hybrids, or just click the link in the caption and make sure to check out what we are doing. We would love to have you as part of our tribe. Now, back to the podcast.
And because I can't help myself, I just peeked open the eyes of my heart. And I see Jesus standing in the office. And he has this huge smile on his face. And he's like, hey, how you doing? Let's go up together. I'm ready. Let's go up into the heavens. Again, this is not an exaggeration. This is exactly how the conversation happened. I looked at him and said out loud, did you not just see what happened? Like, did you not just see what happened? And he's like, yeah, I saw it. Come up here. Let's have a great day together. And I was like, no way, Lord. This is a trick. I'm going to go up and some angel is going to drop kick me right back down. Because it's like, I know it. Like, I know this is a trick, you know? So because I'm kind of dense, I didn't go. And I paced around my office for about 45 minutes trying to justify my ridiculous behavior, preparing the speech like a prodigal would. Okay, Lord, I've been wrong. I've been wayward. Please receive me, the servants in your house, blah, blah. I want to be like a servant. You know, I'd prepared the speech, felt like an idiot, felt like a dirty dog. I peek open the eyes of my heart, still unsatisfied with anything I can do to justify my ridiculousness. And there's Jesus again, and he's looking at me with this face of, you dense, dense man. He just looks at me and goes, would you please just come up here so we could talk about it? And I was like, sure. So I sat on the floor. This is what I do. Sit on the floor. I close these eyes. I open the eyes of my heart. I felt like I was sitting on steps with him, and I felt like I was 8 years old. I was a kid. And he was sitting next to me, almost larger than life. And all he does is he puts his hand kind of like in my lap, so where I can feel his hand, and his palm is up. So he's just kind of taking his hand and just put it over to where I'm sitting. And I'm taking my fingers and I can feel the coarseness of his hand. I can even feel the hole in his hand. Joseph, I lost it. I'm weeping in my mortal body. I am boo-hooing and blowing snot everywhere. I am weeping. I'm undone. I'm literally rubbing the nail hole in his hand. I looked at him sitting next to me like I'm 8 and he's larger than life. And I looked at him and I just said, Lord, how does my foolishness not make you mad? How does it not cause some separation between the two of us? And he looks at me and he says, Christopher, I stayed on the cross until it was done. He said, I didn't cover 99% of the world's sin and leave 1% for you to pay penance for. He said, I stayed until it was finished. And I'm still like losing it. I'm rubbing the hole in his hand while he's telling me this. Joseph, you put yourself in my shoes. Like you're undone. But because I'm really dense, I looked at him and I said, okay, I get that you loved me. I get that you love everybody like crazy. I said, but same question. How does my foolishness not make you mad? How does my continued foolishness not make you mad? How does it not cause some separation between the two of us? And he turns and he faces me on those steps and he gets very serious with me. And he goes, Christopher, God did get mad at your foolishness. And all of that anger was poured out on me so that he would never have to be mad at you again. And I looked at him and I felt like I understood the cross in a way that I'd never seen it before. And he tells me, Christopher, there is no storehouse of God's frowns, of a frowning father, stored up for you for your bad days. Those are completely gone. It doesn't matter what kind of day you're having. All he has for you is this welcoming, loving, accepting smile that you saw me giving to you when you first opened the eyes of your heart. That's all he has. There's no warehouse of frowns that he's storing up for you on your bad days. Now, I've said this in conferences and people will come at me and be like, well, what about this? And what about the consequences of sin? And what I'm like, hey, it's real. All that's real. if you show me someone that is doing heroin, I can predict the consequences of their heroin use. And they're all bad. They will get addicted. They will very likely lose jobs. They will very likely lose a home should it continue. They will probably lose a family. They will probably lose a marriage. There is no way that the consequences don't play out. I said, but you bring me a heroin addict and I will show them how to open the eyes of their heart. And they are not going to find a frowning father when they first see him. They're not going to meet the Lord and he's going to be frowning and go, man, we really expected more out of you. You are an entire disappointment to this heavenly family. That's not going to happen. Bring me the heroin addict. They're going to open their eyes of their heart and they're going to see that same goofy grin that Jesus has on his face when he goes, I am so happy to meet you. Now I'm on a roll here, Joseph. Can I tell one more story?
Go for it.
Okay, as some of you know, I might have mentioned this in the last one. I was a high school teacher. I actually I resigned this past summer, but I was teaching high school and I taught philosophy to a group of seniors in a high school. And I taught them this because I don't know any better. So I taught them how to open the eyes of their heart. And in class, I called it an imagination exercise because I wanted to keep my job. But I taught all of them how to experience the heavens. And it became, we did it on Thursdays typically. It became the thing that the students looked forward to the most every week. This is what they looked forward to. So, everybody probably remembers high school. I have these guys that are sitting on the front row, these 17, 18-year-old guys. You remember, Joseph, when you're 17 and in high school, pretty much the only thing you want to do is look cool in front of the girls. Like that's pretty much it. Like that's it in a nutshell. Just try to look cool in front of the 17-year-old girls. So this day when I'm starting to teach them how to open the eyes of their heart, and I just put them in this position, I said, all right, I want you to imagine the most beautiful, peaceful place that you can come up with in your own imagination. So I didn't make it spiritual. I knew their imaginations already knew what the garden was like because it's already in them. So I was like, you tell me, you start describing it. So, this student is like, I'm on the beach. I'm by a waterfall. I'm in the mountains. Okay. Wherever they are, most beautiful, peaceful, restful place you can imagine. And then I did the present the Lord move. I said, now I want you just to go, Lord, where are you in this picture? And so they kind of mumble it to themselves, where are you in this picture? Okay, well, what starts happening is some of these guys that I know all they want to do is look cool in front of the girls, they get choked up. They're fighting it back. And I managed to get them to talk. And so I said, all right, one of you want to tell me what happens? And this one of my senior guys on the front row says, I was walking in a field, like a field of wheat, wildflowers, that kind of thing. I'm walking in a field and I see Jesus a little ways off. He said, and that's what happened when he said, Lord, where are you in this picture? He said, I saw him. He was a way off. He said, and then all of a sudden, Jesus ran to me and he ran to me across the field and he wrapped me up in his arms. And he said to me, I have been waiting for this moment with you to come. And this kid loses it. And some of the other people are losing it. And they're excusing themselves to go to the restroom because they need to wipe tears away. And they're just trying to look cool in front of their friends. And they're all breaking, because they're encountering God with all of their senses, not in their prayer closet, not in church when it's like, okay, let us pray. They were there and they saw him and they're seated in the heavenly places with him. And it's just, there's so many stories, Joseph. Wow. There's 1,000 for every one, I'm telling you. But anyway, let's take a break. You probably have some stuff to do here. Yeah.
So this school that you're talking about, that's a Christian school?
It was.
Right. So they have a framework or grid. Have you done this with people that don't necessarily?
I have.
Okay.
And in that particular Christian school, I had both kinds.
Okay.
So I had students that were what you'd think of as typical, and then I had a lot of atypical students that were there for sports and other academic issues, weren't necessarily there for the faith factor. So I had all kinds in the room, actually.
Wow.
And what was the second? Have I done this with people that aren't necessarily? Yeah. There have been times, and I've seen it go both ways. I've seen people who don't know the Lord meet the Lord for the first time. And I've seen people that don't know the Lord see him and totally walk the other direction.
Really?
Yep. I've seen it work both ways, where the heart is not in a place where they're ready to receive. And I've watched him, observe him, even have a conversation, but completely reject him and go the other way.
Wow.
Yeah. Thankfully,
Man.
it's more of the former than the latter. So I've seen more of the good kind by a long shot than I have the other kind.
But I guess even the other kind now, something has cemented that they can always go back to and never forget, which is so powerful.
Exactly. How do we know which button it's going to be? Their button gets pushed. I don't know what their number is. It could be 400 times. God's got to push that button, you know?
Wow. It's so interesting you talk about like the penance factor, because I talk about this and joke about it all the time. Like, you know, you make a mistake, you do something wrong, and then we create our own penance. And it's like, for some of us, we need 5 days in a worship service, soaking session before we're like, now we're good, you know? And so that's so good and so true. I'd like to go a little bit more now into the dynamics, like we caught that point of how you're having this trouble with your book, that you have this heavenly encounter. It's not directly related to your book yet. You know, scene 3, it is your book. And you don't run away, you don't switch off. Would you put that down to your desire for him, your desire for intimacy? What are some of your thoughts around that?
I think both of those answers are true. And maybe there's a third factor there as well. But without a doubt, I mean, I was hooked. I was hooked from day one. There was just no way that I was going to let this go. That first moment of feeling like, in that inaugural experience 10 years ago, that first moment of feeling like I have been talking to you through gritted teeth for a really long time. But now I can tell that you are absolutely this God man that was here in the flesh, and you've ascended to the right hand of the Father in the heavenly places, and you've given me access there. And I can see you, and I can touch you, and I can smell, and I can sit down and eat, and we can take communion together there, and I can taste it. And I just thought, there's no way I'm going to pretend that this doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like, I was hooked from day one. What hooked me initially was that intimacy. It was the closest of anything I have ever experienced in my life. And here we are 10 years later. This is how I know it's not a fad. You know, it's not this like, you know, this trick or this like, you know, what's the popular thing that like the Christians are going after? You know, we're a decade in. It continues to be the greatest revolution of my entire life. What I never banked on, what I never saw coming, was that the side effect of getting to know life in eternity was I was going to find out who I really am as a resurrected, immortal human being. I never banked on that. Part of what he had planned was he wants to show us what's up there so we can bring it down here. And I tell folks, if you're just looking horizontally, it's hard to know what to change. But when you start to look up and you're looking into that heavenly realm, you start to see the things that are coming down out of heaven, like John sees the city coming down out of heaven. And Revelation, Joseph, I never banked on what was going to happen, was that I was going to find my immortal inheritance and that I was going to start to bring it here so that I could change and affect the world around me. I just never thought that would happen. I never thought that would be one of the side effects, but I would say I'm just as hooked by that reality as I am. And that's just icing on the cake. The cake was pinch yourself. You're going to go walk around the garden with Jesus for an hour every morning. And you're just going to shoot the breeze and get to know each other on a level you never thought you could. Outside of the prayer for the needs, outside of the intercession for what you want to happen, outside of the Lord, I've got all these problems, but like, walk me around the garden, Lord, and just tell me about yourself, you know? And then he's going, walk around the garden with me, Christopher, and just tell me about yourself. You know, all he wants to do is relate. And then came all the other stuff, the adventure of it, the radical way that it changes our view of what is possible here on earth. Again, I could tell you more stories. You just tell me where you want this to go, Joseph. We can go from there.
I feel like we could do a 5-day conversation. Like, this is amazing. And maybe we do something like that, something out there, you know?
Yeah.
I do want to say a couple of things. One is, do you think before we finish this round or this podcast episode that we could go there all together?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Guys, if you're listening, we're going to do that, okay? And then next, I do want to ask, and now it's totally left my mind what I was going to ask you. Oh, no, when this happens.
It'll come back to you.
No, I wrote it down this time, so I'm good.
Yeah.
I took notes today because I remember last episode, it was amazing and I was gone. So individual expression, I do want to talk to that a little bit. You know, we're seeing people on the earth today that are carrying amazing supernatural things, and different people are doing different things, whether it is living off communion and not actually eating physical food. We know people doing that, you know, and different kinds of things like that, like with no sleep or, you know, some kind of superpower, if you want to call it that. And I'm very big on the fact that we're all born with a purpose, for a purpose, on purpose, and it's very individual, very unique, and the expression of it is very, very personal. I would like to know your thoughts on some of this, because now as we see the superheroes, and I use that term because I truly think that it's like that, you know, as we see maybe the Wolverine show up, and maybe Storm show up, and maybe Cyclops show up, or Captain America, that there is a tendency, especially in Christianity, how we've learned it, to now clone 3,000 Captain Americas and 3,000 Storms. And do you get what I'm trying to say here? Like, what can you speak to that a little bit with the individual expression? And I understand we all go to heaven because that is where, you know, we all have encounters with God. That's our power. That's the source of this whole thing. But can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. I want to say just right off the bat that when people experience the heavens, this is related to what you were saying, so we'll kind of get to it, but when people experience the heavens, even the way that they see the Lord is almost always different for everybody. So I can have a group of 30 people, and we do this in our home. Like, we'll occasionally have home meetings, and we'll just go, all right, we're just going to be in the room. We're going to ask the Lord to be here with us. Let's start describing how we see him. And maybe there's some trends. Maybe there's a few people that see him the same way, but it can oftentimes be different for everybody. And people go right off the bat, is that okay? Is that kind of diversity okay? And my response to that is, it's like looking at a diamond with 1,000 facets. And imagine that diamond being in the center of the room, and all of us are looking at it from a different angle. So we're seeing a different facet. We're seeing the light reflected to us in a slightly different way. We're seeing different colors. That's how magnificent the Lord is, and the heavenly realms for that matter. So that's okay. And I just wanted to say that before we jump into an exercise. But about what the kind of like your superhero comment, which I think is so timely. I really believe in my heart in the, you know, if I talked to a group of people that I'd talk to them about the cosmic ages and how God marks the cosmic ages. And I could tell them, you're in a transition between two cosmic ages right now. And God pays careful attention to this, scripturally speaking. And it's something I love to talk about. But in this next age that God's moving us into, I really believe that the commission for that age is it's almost what Paul hinted at in Romans chapter 8. When he said, when the sons of God are revealed, they're going to liberate the creation from its frustration. They're going to bring it freedom. They're going to let creation loose finally. It's almost like our commission that we're coming into is a lot like the original commission that God gave Adam. And I tell people that the things that you are going to see, the most supernatural, like the most heaven coming to earth kind of stuff, it's always going to be the areas that you have the most love for. Because where your love is, that's always where your authority is. That's always where you have this affinity. And you mentioned, Joseph, like people like, some of them aren't sleeping. And I know some of these people, right? Like they just don't sleep hardly anymore because heaven is so energizing them. Well, that's not me. I'm going to get my 7 to 8 hours or we're in trouble, you know?
Yeah.
That's not me. But I love the stars and the firmament, and I love time, and I love space. So when I see really crazy stuff happen, it's almost always in that part of life and nature and creation. My wife is such a relational person that the way that stuff happens with her and her relationships is supernatural. And she loves, again, she loves all the earth stuff. She loves gardening. I'm lost in the garden, but when she like really gives it her attention, it just, that's when we see supernatural things happen. You know, I've learned in the garden, just do what she says, you know, whatever she tells me to do, that's what I do, you know? But when it comes to time, like whenever I've seen the most like strange heavenly things happen, it almost always involves time. And that's because that's what I love. Like I want to understand time. I want to really grasp it. And I have this affection for it. So I think we're coming into this moment, Joseph, where everybody's going to find out what parts of God's whole creation they were meant to govern in true human kingship. And we're not going to step into true human kingship as a bunch of bullies. Like we're going to demonstrate kingship. I'm sure there's no other way for this to happen. We're going to demonstrate kingship the way that Christ did. Christ never ruled anything just because he was a king. He always ruled by relationship. So I'm very fond of saying you can't rule what you don't know. You can't rule what you haven't established a relationship with. You can bully what you don't know. You can bully what you don't have a relationship with, but that's domination. That's not true dominion. And so I think we're coming into this time where people are going to find this individual expression explode in a way that we've never seen it before, as we start walking into what I think is a much bigger list of gifts and callings and expressions than we've ever had in the scriptures in Corinthians and in Paul's letters. Wow. That's a hunch. Maybe that's probably a story for another day. Probably opens up a very big can of worms, but there you go.
I feel it. I feel what you're saying. I'm very, very excited. And, you know, one of the things that I was seeing was where before there was a big ship that was manned by 1, 2, or 3 people that were doing the stuff, the superheroes, and everyone just got on the ship. Then now there is a shift, and there's going to be hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of little boats, and each person in their boat is carrying their unique expression. And that really excites me, because if we are truly a body, it doesn't matter how great one part is. Without the rest of the body, we are going to lose. And if we're going to win this thing, it has to be as a team. It can't be any other way, right?
Yes, so true. Well, Joseph, should we take that journey together with the listeners?
That'd be awesome.
That way we won't have to rush through it. I would say to anybody that's listening or watching, step 1, don't be driving a car. So, I don't know, pull over if you're driving. You know, whatever you do, don't close your eyes. You know, that's the disclaimer. For everyone else, and let's do this together. And Joseph, of course, you and I are the only ones with active mics, so we can participate, I'm sure, as much as we like. Yep. And if people are listening, I can't see the chat on Zoom like we could on the other platform. Yeah. Are you able to see what people are writing in?
Yep.
Okay, so what we would say to you is, if you're in a place where you're not driving a car and you want to write in what you experience, then Joseph can see it, and I'm sure you can read some of them as people are saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I also want to encourage you, you know, this is one of those exercises where it's like, what do you have to lose? You know, we're going to do this for 10 or 15 minutes. Walk away, maybe ready to explore it some more. If it's not,
no. Wait, Chris, hold on. Are you back? This is unbelievable, guys. It almost feels like an assignment. Like,
yeah.
Are you back?
It does, doesn't it? I'm here.
Man, it feels like an assignment of, I mean, this makes no sense. Our conversation's gone awesome, and now just before the exercise, come on. So, what do we do about this? Are we going to do something about that?
Yes. You know? Well, hang tight. Give me, Joseph, you take it for like 20 seconds. Let me make sure that nothing's going on my end, and then I'll come back and we'll jump into this exercise, okay?
Okay.
Okay, 20 seconds. Ready?
Okay. Yeah. So, all right, guys, you're stuck with me for 20 seconds. This is an interruption in the podcast. Well, not really interruption. Chris is probably going to heaven and getting a solution, sorting this out up there and coming back down. So this is going to be powerful, and we'll just cover this. Lord, we surrender this to you. I thank you that the next 10, 15 minutes are going to be supremely powerful and amazing, and that every person on here is going to have an encounter, a specific, amazing, beautiful encounter that you destined for them for the foundation of the world. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so if it pauses for any reason, there's nothing more I can do. And so we'll just assume that's like a Selah. So if it pauses, that's your opportunity just to sit in God's presence for like 30 seconds. And I'm sure we'll be back and we'll take it from there. So here's what I want you to do is wherever you are, a lot of people, this is easier if you close your eyes. Joseph and I will probably do it with our eyes open because we're watching things as we do this. But for many of you, 90% of you, it's easier with your eyes closed. I trust you to make the right call there based on what feels natural to you. All I want you to do is close your eyes and in your imagination right now, simply imagine the room that you're in. I'm in my office. Joseph is sitting at a table. Just wherever you are, bedroom, again, hopefully not car, wherever you are, just imagine that environment from memory. And this is not spiritual, so you can't possibly get this wrong. Just give you a moment to fill in all the details that you can. And then as soon as you feel ready, I just want you to mumble out loud. You can, if you think someone's going to think you're weird, you can mumble so soft no one can hear you. But just mumble, Lord, where are you in this picture?
Where are you in this picture?
And I want you to trust your very first impression. Very first impression. The reason why I tell you that is because if you'll just take these 10 minutes and give it your first impressions, that's your way of telling the Holy Spirit, I believe you are more powerful than my intellect or my will. So for now, I don't want you to write anything off as being silly or unspiritual. Your very first impression, where is the Lord in that picture with you? And if you want to write it in. Joseph can read it. Joseph, what was your first impression? Did you have one? Jesus
was right here dancing, so excited that people are going in here. And he was like, the gates have always been open. And I saw him holding keys. And he was like, this is it.
Nice.
This is it. No more gatekeepers. I just feel his absolute delight that people are going to start to go into these encounters that he's had. Yeah.
And for me, I saw him leaning. There's a wall right here, and he was leaning up against the wall, smiling. And he seemed very, very comfortable and very like at peace. Now, wherever you see the Lord, just like Joseph and I were just doing, I want you to walk through color, clothing, expression. And I want you to trust your first impressions. Let your imagination do the work. Don't try to wait for it to happen. Remember our conversation from class number 1. Don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for it to hit you upside the head. Let your inner sense do the work here. Let it come from within. Is the Lord wearing clothes? Most of you are going to say yes, because we're not ready for the Garden of Eden, and I'm with you. Okay, so that's supposed to be funny. All right, he's going to be wearing clothes. What colors do you see on him, and what's the expression on the Lord's face? What are your very first guesses? Right now, folks, I'm going to use the word guess because I'm telling you, being 100% sure is a mirage. Just 50% sure, you have nothing to lose. What's your first impressions? Color, clothing, expression.
Whacked out here.
It's a a lot of fun. Is
Oh man, this is juiced.
And even more than his mouth was. It was a very big smile.
We lost you for a bit, but it's
all right.
beautiful.
You tell me when you're back. When I'm back, you let
You're
me know.
back.
Okay, that was
People
a
are
Selah.
writing in that
Yep.
they see
That's
Jesus
just
sitting on the couch, sitting next
great.
to them, dining table, on my car bonnet, landed like a superhero. Sitting next to me, right here with me. He was in the mirror and he laughed and walked through the wall.
Nice.
The doorway, standing next to me with hand on my shoulder, leaning on my wardrobe. He's next to my daughter. So they're all saying different things. White, blue, and soft smile.
Yeah.
And people are describing, yeah, jeans, blue jeans and flip-flops.
Of course he would. That's exactly what he would wear.
He's wearing blue. Another person said blue.
Yeah.
Again, wearing blue jeans and a shirt.
It's common.
Very interesting.
He's not standing on propriety. Yeah.
Another blue prayer shawl. There's a lot of blue here.
This is great. Now here's let's take it a step further. Wherever you are with him right now, I want you to be close. So some of you, he's probably right next to you. But let's go ahead and mumble another question. If he's not, just go, Lord, would you come close to me, or should I come close to you? And you, again, as much as you're comfortable wherever you are, you can mumble that so softly your neighbor couldn't even hear you. But just if he's not right next to you, just go, Lord, would you come close to me, or should I come close to you? And just give you a moment to do that. Let your imagination tell you the story. And again, whatever you believe you've used your imagination for up till now, I can promise you this is why God gave it to you. This is the reason you have eyes of your heart, which I guarantee you, if Paul wrote that Ephesians today with a dictionary that had the word imagination in it, he would have said, I pray that your imagination would be enlightened or illuminated. So here you are. Hopefully you're close together now. And I just want you to ask him one simple question so that you know how he feels about you. Just go, Lord, tell me one thing that you like about me, and see what he says. Just mumble that to him. Lord, tell me one thing that you like about me. And I want you to trust the very first impression, and don't write anything. Your ears.
Trust your first impression and don't write anything. It's for you.
Or something, one thing that you like of me, and see what he says.
One thing that he likes of you.
Yeah. And Joseph, you and I can chime in when we're ready. Our first impression of what he likes about us when we ask him.
I think he said that I'm his fierce lion.
Great. You heard that. Fantastic. He told me tenacity and that I don't give up. Yeah. And it's okay. Like, some of you are going to hear things and you're like, really? I don't think that's me at all. He knows things about you that you don't know.
Mm.
Now we're going to keep going here. And I know that this will be available for a replay. So for some of you, if it's like it's going too fast, rewatch it and press pause when you need to and go through it slower. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to just tell you, this is a great way to have solidarity with the church, with Christians and parts of the world where they're persecuted, because oftentimes they just get together and Jesus is in their midst and he teaches them like the rabbi would. So wherever you are, however you're seeing him in the room, again, don't make it too hard. Let your imagination do the work. Let's ask him this question. Lord, what's one thing you want to make sure we know right now? What's one thing you want to make sure that we know right now? And let the rabbi tell you. Your very first guess. What does he say when you mumble to him, Lord, what's one thing you want to make sure that we know right now? And if you just let yourself trust that very first guess, what did he tell you? For me, I heard him say that I am not far off. I am near each and every one of you. And if you want to write stuff in, you should feel free. I'm sure Joseph can read some stuff off in just a minute. If anybody wanted to share anything.
Someone said, I think my cat is meowing at Jesus.
Right. They have the sense, right? Of course. Of course.
Yeah. That you are all so loved. How much we are loved. He's not religious. That we are loved and we are not a failure. I am here with you.
Beautiful.
You know, for me, I felt he said that we are all one.
Yeah.
All one. You are mine and you are me. That's what I am saying.
Beautiful. Any others, Joseph, you want to put out there?
I will always be with you till the end of days. My love is real. Someone else said, I'm safe. And last one, come as you are.
What I love about that is that, and stay where you are with the Lord. I'm just going to comment for 1 second. We'll take one last step together. What I love about this is that when people get together and they let our Lord and Messiah be in our midst, and he just teaches us, and we just echo what he's saying, it creates the most beautiful sermon anyone has ever heard. And all you have to do is just string those words that were coming in that you were saying, Joseph, and throw your word in there and throw my word in there. And you can hear the sermon Jesus is saying to the kids just by stringing those comments together. It's such a beautiful picture. All right, let's do one more step together, friends. And we won't even have to comment on this because you can take this as far as you want to take it. But wherever you are in the room with him right now, just look at him and say, Lord, would you take me to the garden where all of it first began? And just mumble it to him. The more you talk to yourself out loud, I promise a decade of doing this, I'm not just trying to make you look silly. The more that you can talk to yourself, the better. Just mumble it to him, Lord, would you take me to Eden? Would you take me to that garden of paradise where it all began right now? And I want you to trust the very first impression you have, your very first guesses. What does he do when you say that? And if you just let your imagination tell you the story, it's because your imagination already knows. It already knows what the garden looks like. Already knows where you would be. It already knows what Yeshua wants to show you, what Jesus wants to show you. It remembers, if you would like to use that language, it even remembers it. And so just let your imagination do the work. Again, one last time, I'll say it to you. Whatever else you've used your imagination for your entire life, I can promise you this is why it was given. So you could see things that aren't necessarily in this mortal realm right now. And I want to encourage you while you do this to let him be the chaperone. Some of you, if you feel like, like it works better, I would never discount this. Some people like to say, all right, Lord, I want to do this, but I want to enter in through the blood of Jesus, or I want to enter in through your grace. Or if you feel like you want to say something to the Lord to acknowledge God's in control, you should definitely do that. Kind of a decade of doing it, I just sort of jump in. I love having Jesus as a chaperone. But if you want to just talk to him a minute, go, Lord, I'm just going to go through the door that you opened for us by the blood of the Lamb, whatever that means for you to sanctify the moment, feel free. But if you just trust your first impressions of where he takes you, and then you let him be the chaperone, and you let him show you what he wants to show you, and you be yourself, you ask questions, you can become inquisitive and curious, and you just enjoy the time with him. As we've said, and even in our last time together doing this, that first interview, the possibilities are just endless. And I feel like, Joseph, we can leave it open-ended, that anybody that's listening or watching or will watch the recording of it, you should take as much time as you like. We don't have to stop this. Even if it's time to close the interview, you should just stay where you are and spend as much time as you like exploring that with the Lord.
Awesome. So just stay there, wherever you are, whatever's going on. It's beautiful. So you just stay there. Now, I do want to ask one last thing just to you, Chris, for the people that are writing, that a couple of them are struggling, or in their mind they're struggling to go there. What is one thing you would say to them just before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I have such a heart for people that write that, because I totally understand it. I would say, and just for the record, any of the courses I teach online, or whenever I work on with people one-on-one, it's almost always because that's what they're saying. They're going, I got nothing. What I would tell them is, instead of waiting for a picture to come, to start out with, I want you to paint the picture for me. So all I have to do is typically put them in the driver's seat so that they use the tool that God already gave them. And I would just say, listen, I get where you're coming from, but for right now, I want you to paint the picture of the garden for me. If you get to decide what it looks like, what would you see if you did that? And of course, they're going to say, I feel like I'm just making it up. And I'm going to say, great, that means you're doing it right, because the source should be internal. The Holy Spirit is inside you. This should be coming from within, not from without. It's just a part of you that you're not used to recognizing. It is you, and it feels like you because it is you, but it's also the Holy Spirit through and through. And you can't separate the two out at this point. So I would say, you paint that picture for me as you would like to see it. And they typically can do that. And then I would say, now I want you to paint Jesus into that picture for me, exactly where you would like him to be, looking how you would like him to look, because their imagination already knows all of these details. And then I would say, great, now I want you to imagine you're going to put like a comic book text box coming out of his mouth in the picture. What would you write in there that he would say to you? Now I want you to write your response in there. What does he say to you? And then it's going to be, instead of a picture, you're going to direct the movie for me. So I'm going to be like, all right, take one, what would you direct the movie to do from this point on? And most people are going to be like, well, we're coming towards each other, or he's reaching for me, or something like that. And I'd go, great. Trust your imagination to tell you this story. Now, when we work with people like that, we typically get over almost all of the hurdles, because most of the time it's just we're waiting for it to happen, instead of just going, but he already gave me the tool, and he already gave me everything that I needed to access this. So I'll kind of end, Joseph, by saying this. This is one of those things that we have to ask ourselves, how hard do we want it to be? Because if we want it to be hard to be where he is ascended at the right hand of the Father, then we want something that is the opposite of what he wants. Because he is so ready for all of the kids to be right where he is, experiencing the fullness of their immortal life, even as they walk around this mortal sojourn together. So the question, how hard do we want this to be? And if we're like, not hard, then you've got to take the leap of faith that God put something in you probably a long time ago that's capable of doing everything that you need it to do right now. We've just got to use it. It's a spiritual muscle, and we've just got to use it. We could talk about that for another hour, Joseph, about just like working people through the imagination hurdle of getting over that hurdle. But that's probably as small a piece as we can do right now.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And there you go, guys. So some of you are still in that place. Stay in that place.
Yes.
We are going to end this podcast. I will put Chris's website is already on the other caption. We'll put it on this one too. It's just discovertheheavens.org.
That's correct. Discovertheheavens.org.
and he's got all resources there. You can go to Amazon and search his name, Christopher Carter. There's books on there that you can get. And I'm convinced this is not the last time we're doing something like this. So guys, for today, we're just going to say bye, stay in this place, engage it as much as you can. Keep a lookout for more and more of what we're going to do. So till then, love you guys. Have a great day, great evening, great night. And we
so enjoyed it. Thank you, Joseph. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate you. All right, take care, guys. See you.
Faith and patience. Faith and patience. Patience means allow it to happen. Stay the same. Stay persistent. Keep going. Faith, know that it can happen at any moment. Get excited because it can happen at any moment. You were so close. Don't quit now. Keep pushing. You got this.